I grew up without a dad, and it wasn't a bad childhood at all. I had a lot of very strong male role models, particularly my uncle, who built dragsters. My grandfather was tough as nails. My sister Jill, who could probably still take care of all of us right here in the room. And it really wasn't until I went to high school and I ran into Jesuit priests. I went to a school run by Jesuits. Okay, it's Brophy. And they were terrifying and wonderful and passionate and brilliant and funny. And a few of them stand out a lot in terms of role models for me. Father Lacoste, who would sit there and clean his teeth with a buck knife that was stuck in his desk. And he would take it out while he's talking to you and do his teeth. And, Father Growney, who would chain smoke during class. And he would blow a smoke ring like no other person could. And it would move across the room. And he would reach out and put a smiley face onto it. And then a couple of eyes, and it would just sit there in this beautiful 3D art form and move across the room. And we'd look at it, and then he'd catch you looking at it. And he'd say, start taking notes. And we'd do that. By far, Father John Becker had more of an influence on me than anyone else, I suppose. Maybe because he saw me as more than the little kid I was, and invited me to a school newspaper that I didn't even want to join. Lend me a camera when I didn't know how to use a camera. He had all those qualities, I think, that I didn't know I wanted. For instance, the humor alone. I mean, puns. This man lived for puns. What's a pun? That's when you mean to say one thing, but instead you say a mother. His favorite novel was supposedly the Mexican mystery murder classic Tequila Mockingbird. That is such a stupid joke, and it's still funny. If you get this next one, then good for you. But he had a bumper sticker, the way I remember it, that said, "Bad spellers of the world, untie." If you didn't get that, it'll come to you later. Maybe look it up. But brilliant too. I mean, there's not a part of my English skill that doesn't come to him. He could tell you the difference between an ablative absolute and a dangling modifier, and most of us won't get that either. But he could. And when I got hired back, because I've taught there for 20 years, I would run into him, panicked. What is this? What is this? That's progressive tense. And, oh, okay. And I figured it out. But he also knew that there's something terrifying with working with the Jesuits. I'm not ordained. I have no vows. I have a family right over here. In our senior year, he knew of me losing an ex-girlfriend I met before my wife to breast cancer. It's not always easy when you're expected to be a spiritual counselor and you don't feel that spiritual. When death comes to a high school, it's not any different. On the other hand, it's so much more a life-changing thing for a young person. They look at themselves as invincible. They look at themselves as untouchable, and then suddenly they are. And so what do? We end up in the gym, holding hands. We end up in the chapel crying. And some of us who aren't ordained, we end up trying to explain the unexplainable. To tell people this means something and have a reason to it. And that's not always easy. The moment the whole thing changes is about 5 years ago. And I see it very clearly. My family's at dinner. Right before dinner, we have our prayer. It tends to be one of the more common prayers. At least we have a chance to get together. Sometimes it's chaos, but I think it's important to mention it was close to prayer. And my daughter's across from me. She's 3 years old. I'm looking at her. Chaos is going around as plates move around. My daughter says, "Who's that man?" And I think I was the only one that heard that. I kept handing something, and I kind of remember her always with the fork up to her mouth like this. And I kind of looked at her, and she repeated, I think, word for word, who's that man? Now she points. And I look over my shoulder, and there's nothing there. There's TV, but TV's off at dinner time. And I look back at her, and she's fixed. She sees this thing. She sees it clearly right over my shoulder. And she says, the dead man. What does he want? And she points. And I think when she said dead man, everyone at the table stopped. Everyone. Plates, and everyone looks at her and looks out to where she's pointing, and there's nothing there. And she's still looking at it. I think she repeated dead man twice. I think she said again, what does the dead man want? And so we all foolishly, kind of look back and forth. There's nothing there. And she's looking at it. And it went on just long enough to reach a point where we all said, or begin to feel, we need to say something. Honey, there's nothing there. When suddenly the fork goes up, and she's done. She says, no, it's okay, he's gone. We just kind of all stood there, or sat there, shocked. In fact, I think we were still shocked for days. We still, in some ways, try not to talk about it. She's not here tonight. I'm always afraid of her being labeled as the girl who sees things, or something like that. But she saw it. We know it. We've talked about it. And in the processing of it, it's taken a long time. It's a fun story to tell. More often than not, I'm trying to make people believe that it happened. That's not really the key point. Because later in the evening, about 9 or 10 o'clock, we took a phone call from another Jesuit priest who told me that Father John Becker passed away right around dinner time. And it was internal. No one needed to explain to me what had happened. My wife knew it too when I said it to her. We knew who was there in the living room, family room with us. My daughter was never scared of this person. Whatever she was seeing never frightened her. She kind of smiled her way through it, never really interrupted dinner much. But we knew, and I still know, that Father Becker had one more chance to teach me something. And he took that opportunity to show me a lesson that I hadn't quite realized I needed the way I did, to be told that death is not the stopping point that for too many years I thought it was, that too often I responded to death with anger and with distancing myself from people. And it's not the end all that I was afraid it was. It's a step into something else, and a great teacher of mine had a chance to teach that to me, even after you think you might not have been able to. Thank you.